The transport ship shuddered as it entered Earth's atmosphere. Sarah Chen pressed her face against the small porthole, watching her home planet grow larger below. After 12 years serving in the Galactic Defense Corps, she was finally coming home. The irony wasn't lost on her that she felt more nervous about returning to high school than she had facing down hostile alien forces. At age 6, Sarah had been selected for the Human Military Exchange Program. Earth's government had agreed to send their best and brightest children to train with alien military forces across the galaxy. The goal was simple: learn from advanced civilizations and bring that knowledge back to strengthen humanity's position in the galactic community. What they hadn't anticipated was how thoroughly the program would change the children who participated. Sarah touched the neural implant behind her ear, a gift from the Zephyrian Military Academy, where she'd spent 4 years learning combat tactics that human minds weren't supposed to comprehend. The small device translated 17 different alien languages instantly and enhanced her reflexes to superhuman levels. Her hands, once soft and small, now bore the calluses of weapons training and the faint blue scars from Krillian energy blade practice. The ship landed with a gentle thud at the military spaceport outside Denver. Sarah gathered her few belongings, a duffel bag containing clothes that felt foreign after years in military uniforms, and a small case holding commendations from 7 different alien species. She'd learned to fight like a Thrakari berserker, think strategically like a Zephyrian commander, and maintain equipment like a mechanoid engineer. But now she had to remember how to be a human teenager. Her parents waited at the arrival gate, looking older than she remembered. Her mother cried when she saw her, reaching out tentatively as if Sarah might disappear again. Her father stood straighter, pride evident in his eyes as he took in her military bearing and the subtle confidence that came from surviving battles across 3 star systems. "Welcome home, sweetheart," her mother whispered, pulling her into an embrace that felt both familiar and strange. The drive through Denver revealed a city transformed. Alien technology had revolutionized human society during her absence. Hover cars shared the roads with traditional vehicles, and holographic advertisements flickered between towering buildings, made from materials that hadn't existed when she'd left. Her parents explained the changes excitedly, but Sarah found herself analyzing defensive positions and escape routes rather than marveling at the progress. Her childhood home looked impossibly small. The bedroom that had once seemed spacious now felt cramped after years in military barracks and starship quarters. Pink walls covered with posters of boy bands felt like artifacts from someone else's life. Her mother had kept everything exactly as she'd left it, a shrine to the little girl who'd departed 12 years ago. That evening, over dinner, her parents briefed her on what to expect at Jefferson High School. The student body had grown diverse with the addition of young alien exchange students. The curriculum now included xenobiology and interstellar politics alongside traditional subjects. Most importantly, several other veterans of the Human Military Exchange Program would be attending, though they'd all returned at different times over the past few years. "You'll fit right in," her father assured her, cutting into his synthesized protein steak, a delicacy that tasted like cardboard compared to the exotic cuisines she'd experienced across the galaxy. Sarah nodded, but said nothing. She'd learned that civilians, even well-meaning parents, couldn't understand what she'd experienced. How could she explain watching entire worlds burn during the Sector 7 conflict? How could she describe the weight of commanding troops in battles, where one wrong decision meant the extinction of entire species? How could she convey the loneliness of being the only human in a squad of beings who communicated through bioluminescent patterns? Later that night, she stood in her old bedroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The face looking back was harder than she remembered, marked by a thin scar across her left cheek from a Vorthan assassin's blade. Her eyes held depths that hadn't existed 12 years ago, depths carved by experiences no human teenager should have endured. She activated her neural implant and accessed the files containing her high school class roster. The names meant nothing to her, but the accompanying photos showed faces full of innocence and naivety that she envied. These students worried about grades and dating and college applications. Their biggest concerns were acne and social status, problems that seemed impossibly trivial after coordinating defensive strategies against planet-killing weapons. Among the files, she found profiles of the other exchange program veterans. Marcus Rodriguez had returned 3 years ago, after serving with the Aquatic Defense Fleet. Lisa Park had completed her service with the Telepathic Communication Corps just last year. David Thompson had been back the longest, having served a shortened term with the Engineering Auxiliary before, suffering injuries that ended his military career early. Each profile included a note from the school counselor about adjustment, difficulties, and integration challenges. The euphemisms were diplomatic ways of saying that warriors didn't easily transform back into children. Sarah closed the files and walked to her window, looking out at the suburban neighborhood where she'd spent her early childhood. Sprinkler systems watered perfect lawns in front of identical houses where families slept peacefully, protected by defenses they couldn't see, and defended by soldiers they'd never meet. The tranquility was beautiful and suffocating at the same time. Tomorrow she would walk into Jefferson High School and pretend to be a normal teenager. She would sit in classrooms and listen to teachers explain concepts she'd learned from their alien originators. She would navigate social hierarchies that seemed absurd after commanding respect from beings who could atomize her with a thought. She would try to connect with peers whose biggest challenges were choosing prom dates and passing chemistry tests. The military had forged her into a weapon, capable of defending humanity against threats from across the galaxy. But tomorrow's challenge felt more daunting than any battlefield she'd faced. Tomorrow she had to learn how to be human again, knowing that the innocence required for true integration was a casualty of war she could never recover. As she prepared for bed, Sarah wondered if the girl who'd left Earth 12 years ago had really come home, or if she'd died somewhere among the stars, leaving only a warrior wearing her face. The alarm clock's shrill cry jolted Sarah awake at 500 hours. Old habits died hard, and her body still responded to military time despite being back on Earth for 3 days. She dressed quickly in the civilian clothes her mother had bought, jeans that felt restrictive after years in flexible combat gear, and a simple blue sweater that seemed impossibly bright compared to the muted colors of military uniforms. Jefferson High School loomed before her like a fortress built for comfort rather than defense. Students streamed through the main entrance, their laughter and chatter creating a cacophony that set her nerves on edge. During her military service, unexpected noise meant incoming fire or imminent danger. Here, it simply meant teenagers being teenagers. The principal, Mrs. Davidson, greeted her with the kind of forced enthusiasm reserved for special cases. She'd clearly been briefed about Sarah's background and seemed nervous about having a military veteran in her school. The woman's hands shook slightly as she handed Sarah her schedule and locker assignment. "If you need anything at all, dear, please don't hesitate to ask," Mrs. Davidson said, her voice pitched higher than normal. "We have counselors available, and we understand that readjustment can be challenging." Sarah nodded politely, though she wanted to point out that she'd successfully negotiated peace treaties between species that had been at war for centuries. High school couldn't be more challenging than preventing genocidal conflicts. Her first class was advanced xenobiology, taught by Dr. Martinez, an enthusiastic woman who'd never left Earth's solar system. The teacher introduced basic concepts about alien physiology that Sarah had learned through direct experience. When Dr. Martinez explained Zephyrian respiratory systems, Sarah resisted the urge to mention that she'd performed emergency surgery on a Zephyrian commander using nothing but a combat knife and medical nanites. Her classmates seemed like children playing at being adults. They gossiped about weekend parties and upcoming dances, concerns that felt surreal after years of life or death decisions. During group discussions about theoretical first contact scenarios, Sarah found herself biting her tongue to avoid revealing that she'd personally facilitated first contact between humans and 3 previously unknown species. At lunch, she sat alone in the cafeteria, observing the complex social dynamics that governed teenage behavior. Cliques formed and reformed like fluid military units, but without purpose or objective beyond social status. The popular kids ruled their table like territorial commanders, while outcasts huddled together for mutual protection against the cruelties of adolescent hierarchy. "Mind if I sit here?" Sarah looked up to see a tall Asian girl with short black hair and eyes that held more depth than most of her classmates. Lisa Park, according to her memories of the exchange program files. "The telepathic communication specialist. Free seating," Sarah replied, gesturing to the empty chairs around her table. Lisa sat down carefully, maintaining a respectful distance. "I know who you are. Sarah Chen. Galactic Defense Corps, decorated veteran of the Sector 7 conflict. Your reputation preceded you. And you're Lisa Park, Telepathic Communication Corps. How's civilian life treating you? Lisa laughed, but there was no humor in it. About as well as you'd expect. Yesterday, my English teacher asked me to write an essay about my summer vacation. I started describing the time I helped negotiate a hostage crisis on Proxima Station, then realized I had to make up something about working at a summer camp instead. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, two soldiers recognizing each other in enemy territory. Other students gave their table a wide berth, sensing something different about the two girls without understanding what it was. The others are here too, Lisa said quietly. Marcus is in my chemistry class. He spends most of his time staring out the window like he's expecting an orbital bombardment. David's in my history class, but he doesn't talk much since his injury. The prosthetic arm makes him self-conscious. How do they cope? Poorly. Marcus got suspended last month for getting into a fight. Some kid made a joke about alien invasions and Marcus snapped. Took 3 teachers to pull him off. David barely speaks to anyone. He has nightmares about the engineering accident that ended his service, and me, I keep accidentally picking up people's thoughts and having to pretend I don't know what they're really thinking. Sarah nodded, understanding completely. Her own neural implant occasionally activated without conscious command, translating conversations in alien languages that didn't exist on Earth, or enhancing her hearing to levels that revealed uncomfortable truths about her classmates' opinions. The afternoon brought more challenges. In her physics class, the teacher discussed theoretical faster-than-light travel, while Sarah had piloted ships that exceeded light speed regularly. During chemistry, students struggled with basic molecular bonding that she'd learned to manipulate at the atomic level for combat applications. The worst part wasn't the academic disconnect, it was the social isolation. Her classmates sensed something different about her without being able to identify it. Conversations died when she approached. Teachers treated her with a mixture of respect and wariness that created distance rather than connection. She was simultaneously too old and too young, too experienced and too naive about the things that mattered in high school. After school, she found herself in the gymnasium, drawn by the familiar sounds of combat training. The wrestling team was practicing, and she watched them grapple with techniques that would get them killed in real combat. Their movements were slow and predictable, compared to the lightning-fast reflexes she'd developed fighting. Beings with superhuman speed and strength. Coach. Williams noticed her watching and approached with the swagger of someone accustomed to intimidating teenagers. You thinking about joining the team, new girl? We could use someone with your build. Sarah almost laughed. Her build had been sculpted by alien training regimens that pushed human physiology beyond its normal limits. She could probably defeat the entire wrestling team simultaneously without breaking stride. I'll think about it, she said diplomatically. Walking home, she encountered her first real test of self-control. 3 older students had cornered a younger kid behind the school, taking his lunch money and threatening him with violence. The scene triggered every protective instinct her military training had instilled. She approached quietly, her footsteps making no sound on the asphalt. Years of stealth training kicked in automatically. Leave him alone, she said calmly. The leader, a large boy with the soft features of someone who'd never faced real danger, turned to sneer at her. Or what, new girl? You gonna call your mommy? Sarah's hand moved instinctively toward where her sidearm would have been, then stopped as she remembered she was no longer armed. Instead, she stepped forward, letting her military bearing speak for itself. The change in her posture was subtle but unmistakable. From civilian teenager to trained killer in the space of a heartbeat. The bullies took an unconscious step backward, their primitive hindbrain recognizing a predator despite their conscious minds not understanding why. Or I'll make you regret it, she said quietly, her voice carrying the absolute certainty of someone who'd made and kept similar promises across multiple star systems. They left quickly, muttering threats they'd never follow through on. The younger student thanked her breathlessly before hurrying away, leaving Sarah alone with the realization that her old life was never truly gone. It lived in her bones, in her reflexes, in the cold calculation that turned a high school hallway into a tactical assessment. That evening, she called the military liaison office and requested permission to remain on active reserves. If she had to pretend to be a normal teenager, she needed the anchor of knowing her real identity remained intact. 3 weeks into her civilian education, Sarah had established a routine that kept her sane. She woke before dawn for physical training in her backyard, maintaining the combat fitness that had kept her alive across 7 star systems. Her neighbors thought she was dedicated to health and wellness. In reality, she was fighting the mental decay that came from lack of purpose. The 4 exchange program veterans had formed an unofficial alliance, eating lunch together and sharing knowing looks when their classmates complained about trivial problems. They were islands of experience in an ocean of adolescent concerns, bound together by shared understanding of what real stakes looked like. Today brought a new challenge, the annual Career Day presentation. Students were required to speak about their future goals and the paths they planned to take after graduation. For most teenagers, this meant discussing college plans or entry-level jobs. For Sarah, it meant fabricating a civilian dream while hiding the fact that she'd already lived several lifetimes' worth of career achievements. She sat in the auditorium watching her classmates present. Conventional aspirations. Jennifer Walsh wanted to be a veterinarian. Tommy Rodriguez planned to study engineering. Amanda Foster dreamed of becoming a teacher. Their goals were admirable and normal, unmarked by the weight of having already seen too much of the universe's darkness. When her turn came, Sarah approached the podium with the measured stride of someone accustomed to addressing military briefings. The microphone felt strange after years of using telepathic communication devices and neural network broadcasts. "I'm Sarah Chen," she began, her voice carrying further than necessary in the small space. "I plan to study international relations and diplomacy." It was technically true, though she failed to mention that her diplomatic experience included preventing 3 interstellar wars and negotiating resource-sharing agreements between species whose fundamental biology made cooperation nearly impossible. "Why diplomacy?" asked Mrs. Henderson, the career counselor. Sarah paused, choosing her words carefully. "Because I've seen what happens when communication fails. Conflict is often the result of misunderstanding, and I believe in the power of finding common ground between different groups." Again, technically accurate. She'd seen entire civilizations reduced to radioactive ash because diplomats failed to bridge cultural gaps. She'd watched peaceful species transform into genocidal machines when their attempts at communication were misinterpreted as threats. After her presentation, she returned to her seat, ignoring the curious looks from classmates who sensed deeper currents beneath her words. Lisa Park gave her a subtle nod of approval. Fellow veterans recognized the art of selective truth-telling. The afternoon brought an unexpected complication. Mr. Peterson, her European history teacher, assigned a project on the causes and consequences of military conflicts. Students were required to analyze historical battles and discuss how they might have been prevented through different strategies. Sarah stared at the assignment sheet, fighting the urge to laugh at the irony. Her classmates would be researching ancient conflicts from textbooks and internet sources. She had personal experience with military strategies that made Earth's historical battles look like children's games. "You seem amused by something, Miss Chen," Mr. Peterson observed, his tone carrying the mild irritation of a teacher dealing with what he perceived as a disrespectful student. "Not amused, sir. Just thinking about the complexity of the assignment. I'm sure you'll manage. Perhaps you could focus on the American Civil War or World War II. Nothing too challenging for someone your age." The condescension in his voice triggered a response Sarah had to actively suppress. She'd commanded troops older than Mr. Peterson in battles that determined the fate of solar systems. She'd studied military history with beings who'd personally witnessed conflicts spanning millennia. After class, Marcus Rodriguez caught up with her in the hallway. His eyes held the hollow look that came from seeing too much death too young. "Peterson's an idiot," he said without preamble. "Yesterday he lectured us about naval strategy like he's some kind of expert." I kept my mouth shut, but I wanted to tell him about the Aquatic Defense Fleet's tactics during the Cetacean Uprising. "We can't," Sarah replied simply. "Classified information aside, they wouldn't understand. They think war is about politics and resources. They don't comprehend conflicts where the stakes are species survival." They walked in silence until Marcus spoke again. "I dream about the ships sometimes. The ones we couldn't save during the reef battle. Civilian transports full of families, and we had to make tactical decisions about which ones to protect first." Sarah understood. Her own nightmares featured similar choices. The weight of command decisions where every option led to tragedy, just varying degrees of it. How do you handle it here? When they complain about homework stress or relationship drama? Badly. Last week, Jennifer Walsh cried because she got a B+ on her math test. A B+ made her cry. Sarah. I wanted to shake her and explain that real problems involve watching your squad mates die because intel was wrong or equipment failed. But we don't, Sarah said, because they deserve their innocence. We fought to preserve their right to worry about grades and dating and normal teenage concerns. Marcus nodded, but his expression remained bitter. Sometimes I wonder if it was worth it. We gave up our childhoods to protect theirs, and now we're strangers in our own species. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of David Thompson, moving awkwardly on his prosthetic leg. His left arm was also artificial, a reminder of the engineering accident that had ended his military career and sent him home before his tour was complete. Philosophical discussion? He asked, noting their serious expressions. Existential crisis, Marcus corrected. Standard Tuesday afternoon for the Veterans Club. David's laugh held no humor. At least you two completed your service with honor. I'm the guy who couldn't handle the pressure and got himself blown up by his own equipment. You survived an antimatter containment breach, Sarah pointed out. The fact that you're still alive makes you the toughest person in this school. Tell that to the kids, who stare at my prosthetics like I'm some kind of freak. The three veterans stood together in the hallway, young people carrying old souls, bound by experiences that set them apart from everyone around them. Other students flowed past them like water around stones, unconsciously avoiding the space where something different and dangerous resided. That evening, Sarah worked on her history project, researching Earth's military conflicts with the perspective of someone who'd seen warfare evolved beyond planetary boundaries. She found herself comparing human strategies to alien tactics, analyzing historical decisions through the lens of interstellar combat experience. Her parents knocked on her door around 9 o'clock, bringing hot chocolate and concerned expressions. How was school today, sweetheart? Her mother asked, settling on the edge of the bed. Educational, Sarah replied, which was technically true in ways her mother couldn't imagine. Are you making friends? You seem isolated. Sarah considered explaining that she'd found her tribe among fellow veterans, young people who understood the weight of carrying weapons designed to kill beings from across the galaxy. Instead, she smiled and said, I'm adjusting. It takes time. Her father studied her with the sharp eyes of someone who'd spent years reading military reports. If you need to talk about anything about your service or the transition, we're here. We may not understand everything you experienced, but we love you. After they left, Sarah returned to her assignment, writing about historical conflicts while carefully avoiding any mention of the fact that she'd personally prevented wars that would have made Earth's bloodiest battles look like minor skirmishes. She was learning to live between worlds, part warrior, part teenager, fully neither. The morning started like any other until the emergency broadcast interrupted first period. Every screen in Jefferson High School flickered to life, displaying the stern face of Admiral Martinez from Earth Defense Command. Students initially assumed it was another routine drill until they heard the words that changed everything. This is not a test. Earth is under immediate threat from an unknown hostile force. All military personnel are ordered to report for emergency duty. Civilian populations should remain calm and follow local emergency protocols. Sarah's neural implant activated automatically, connecting her to the military command network she'd been away from for weeks. Data flooded her consciousness. Enemy ship configurations, tactical assessments, deployment orders. 3 massive vessels of unknown origin had emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Their intentions unclear, but their weapon signatures unmistakably hostile. Around her, students began to panic. Some cried, others called their parents, many sat in stunned silence. Teachers attempted to maintain order while clearly having no idea how to handle the situation. In the chaos, Sarah felt a familiar calm descend over her, the warrior's peace that came when training took over from emotion. She stood and walked purposefully toward the door, her movement catching the attention of her panicked classmates. Where are you going? Demanded Mrs. Rodriguez, the algebra teacher whose voice had risen 2 octaves since the announcement. I'm reporting for duty, Sarah replied simply. You're 17 years old. You're a student. Sarah paused at the doorway, her civilian facade finally cracking. No, ma'am. I'm a decorated veteran of the Galactic Defense Corps with 12 years of active combat experience. And right now my planet needs me. She walked out, leaving behind a classroom full of shocked faces. In the hallway, she found the other veterans moving with the same purposeful efficiency. Marcus strode past lockers like he was navigating a ship's corridor. Lisa moved with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to combat situations. Even David, hampered by his prosthetics, carried himself with military bearing that made his artificial limbs seem like battle scars rather than disabilities. They converged at the main entrance without speaking. 4 young people transformed by crisis from awkward teenagers back into the soldiers they'd always been underneath. "Transport will be here in 6 minutes," Lisa announced, her telepathic implant providing real-time updates from command. "Priority Alpha recall for all exchange program veterans." "What's the tactical situation?" Marcus asked, his mind already shifting into combat mode. Sarah's implant delivered the briefing as they walked outside. 3 ships, each roughly the size of a small moon. Technology appears to be beyond anything in our databases. They're not responding to communication attempts, but they're maintaining position at the system's edge like they're studying us. "Sounds familiar," David muttered. "Remember the observers during the Vega campaign? They watched for 3 days before they started sterilizing planets. A military transport landed on the school's front lawn, its anti-grav engines flattening the carefully maintained grass. Other students pressed against windows, watching in amazement as 4 of their classmates boarded a craft that moments before had been the stuff of science fiction movies. The pilot was Lieutenant Commander Jackson, a woman Sarah recognized from her time at Luna Station. "Good to see you again, Chen. Sorry to pull you away from your vacation, but we need every experienced officer we can get." "Status report?" Sarah asked, settling into her seat and feeling the familiar comfort of military efficiency. "Unknown hostiles detected at 0800 hours. 3 massive vessels, configuration unlike anything in our databases. They've been scanning our inner system for the past 4 hours, concentrating on Earth, Mars, and the asteroid mining stations. No communication attempts have been successful. The transport accelerated toward orbit, carrying them away from the world of homework and teenage drama toward the reality they'd been trained for since childhood." Through the viewport, Sarah could see other transports, launching from cities around the globe, the hidden infrastructure of Earth's defense network activating like an immune system responding to infection. "What's our assignment?" Marcus asked, his experience with naval tactics making him invaluable for ship-to-ship combat. "You're being reassigned to your old units temporarily. Chen, you're wanted on the flagship for strategic consultation. Park, they need your communication expertise to attempt contact with the hostiles. Rodriguez, you're taking command of Patrol Squadron 7. Thompson, they want you in engineering. Your prosthetics actually make you more compatible with our newest systems." David straightened with pride at being needed despite his injuries. It was the first time since his accident that his cybernetic limbs were seen as advantages rather than limitations. The journey to the fleet took 40 minutes, during which Sarah reviewed tactical data and felt her civilian personality falling away like a discarded costume. The girl who worried about fitting in at high school was replaced by the officer who'd faced down alien armadas and lived to tell about it. The flagship Defiant hung in space like a predatory beast, its hull bristling with weapons that incorporated technology from a dozen different species. Admiral Chen, no relation despite the shared name, greeted them in the briefing room with the grim efficiency of a career military officer facing the unknown. "Good to have you back, all of you. I know this interrupts your reintegration, but we need your expertise. These ships..." He gestured to the tactical display showing 3 ominous shapes at the edge of the solar system. "They're using technology that makes our best equipment look like stone axes." Sarah studied the sensor readings, her trained eye picking out details that escaped less experienced officers. "Energy signatures are similar to what we encountered during the deep space expedition, but amplified by several orders of magnitude. If these are the same builders, we're looking at technology that's evolved far beyond what we faced before. Can we fight them?" Admiral Chen asked bluntly. Sarah considered the question with the cold calculation of someone who'd fought impossible odds before. "Unknown. Their vessels appear to be primarily observation platforms, but the energy readings suggest they could level our entire fleet without significant effort. However, they've made no aggressive moves despite having clear tactical superiority. Recommendations: continue attempts at communication while quietly positioning our forces for defensive action. If they wanted us dead, we'd already be vapor. They're here for a reason. And until we know what that is, we have to assume they can be reasoned with. Lisa stepped forward, her communication implants already interfacing with the ship's systems. I'm detecting complex electromagnetic patterns from their vessels. It might be some form of communication we're not recognizing. Work with the linguistics team to decode it. Rodriguez, I want you to coordinate with our patrol squadrons. If this goes badly, we'll need every ship ready for combat. Thompson, get down to engineering and help them prepare our defensive systems. As the briefing broke up, Sarah found herself facing the familiar weight of command responsibility. Hours ago, her biggest concern had been finishing her history project. Now she was helping plan humanity's response to a potential extinction-level threat. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent weeks trying to fit in among classmates who saw her as strange and different. Now she was back where she belonged, among people who valued her for exactly the qualities that made her an outcast in high school. Her neural implant chimed with an incoming priority message from the alien vessels. Lisa's voice echoed through the command center, tense with discovery. Admiral, I'm receiving structured communication from the lead vessel. It's complex, but I think they're asking for someone specific. They're asking for the warriors who fought in the Sector 7 conflict. Sarah felt ice form in her stomach. The Sector 7 conflict had been classified at the highest levels, known only to the participants and high command. If these aliens knew about it, they either had intelligence capabilities that made them incredibly dangerous, or they had been watching humanity far longer than anyone realized. They're asking for us specifically, she said quietly. This isn't a random first contact. They came here looking for the exchange program veterans. The communication chamber aboard the Defiant had been hastily modified to accommodate the alien transmission protocols. Sarah stood before a shimmering holographic interface, her neural implant working overtime to process the complex data streams flowing between the ships. Around her, the command staff watched in tense silence as humanity's first confirmed contact with an unknown species unfolded. The hologram stabilized, revealing a figure that defied easy description. Tall and graceful, with features that seemed to shift between familiar and utterly alien, the being regarded Sarah with eyes that held depths of knowledge accumulated over millennia. When it spoke, the words bypassed normal hearing and appeared directly in her consciousness through her implant. I am First Observer Catherine of the Eternal Watch. We have come seeking the young warriors of Earth, who fought alongside our allied species in the conflict. You call Sector 7? Sarah stepped forward, feeling the weight of representing not just humanity, but all the veterans who'd sacrificed their childhoods for galactic peace. I am Major Sarah Chen, Galactic Defense Corps. I commanded the 3rd Human Battalion during the Sector 7 operations. Why do you seek us? The alien's expression, if it could be called that, conveyed something like approval mixed with ancient sadness. Because you have passed the test of worthiness, young one. The conflicts you believed were random acts of aggression were carefully orchestrated trials. We have been watching your species for generations, waiting to see if humanity possessed the qualities necessary for the next phase of galactic evolution. Around the command center, humans exchanged bewildered glances. Admiral Chen stepped forward, his voice tight with control. Are you saying that the wars our children fought were tests? That the deaths, the suffering, were regrettable but necessary? First Observer Catherine interrupted without apparent remorse. Every species that seeks to join the greater collective must prove their worth through trial by fire. Most fail. They either lack the courage to send their young to fight alongside strangers, or they break under the pressure of conflicts beyond their understanding. Humanity succeeded beyond our highest expectations. Sarah felt a cold rage building in her chest. You're telling us that we sent children to die in wars you created as some kind of cosmic entrance exam? Not children, the observer corrected. Warriors! The exchange program identified those among your species with the greatest potential for growth through adversity. They were given training and experience that would have taken centuries to acquire through peaceful means. The battles they fought, the alliances they forged, the wisdom they gained. All of this was designed to create a cadre of humans capable of functioning at the galactic level. Lisa Park's voice cut through the mounting tension in the room. The telepathic networks we learned to use, the combat techniques, the diplomatic protocols. You made sure we'd be compatible with higher-level galactic society. Precisely. Your species showed remarkable adaptability, courage, and ethical flexibility. The human veterans of our trials have become legends among the species they served alongside. Your tactical innovations during the Vega campaign are now taught in military academies across 17 star systems. Marcus Rodriguez spoke up from his position at the tactical station. What about those who didn't survive? The friends we lost, the civilizations that were destroyed during these tests? First observer. Catherine's image flickered, perhaps indicating some form of emotional response. Every test requires sacrifice. The species that failed our trials, those who proved unworthy, were indeed lost, but their sacrifice enabled the worthy to advance. Your fallen comrades died heroically, defending principles that will now reshape the galaxy. And if we refuse your invitation to join whatever this greater collective is, Admiral Chen demanded, then you continue as you are, a single-planet species with limited technology and lifespan, eventually consumed by entropy like countless others. The invitation is offered only once. Accept, and humanity joins a confederation of advanced species working toward goals beyond your current comprehension. Refuse, and you remain forever isolated. Sarah studied the alien through her implant's enhanced vision, reading micro-expressions and energy patterns that normal humans couldn't detect. What she saw disturbed her more than the observer's words. You're not just offering membership, she realized aloud. You're offering ascension. Biological and technological enhancement that would fundamentally change what it means to be human. Your insight serves you well, Major Chen. Yes, the greater collective consists of species that have evolved beyond their original biological limitations, enhanced lifespan, expanded consciousness, technological integration that makes your current implants seem primitive. But the cost is the sacrifice of your species' original nature. The command center erupted in whispered conversations as the implications sank in. Admiral Chen raised his hand for silence. How long do we have to decide? Your answer must be given within one of your solar days. The window for ascension opens rarely and closes permanently. However, the decision cannot be made by your military leaders or political authorities. It must come from those who have proven themselves through trial, the exchange program veterans. Sarah felt the crushing weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. How many veterans would need to agree? All of them. The decision must be unanimous among those who survived the trials. Humanity advances as one, or not at all. As the communication ended and the observer's image faded, Sarah found herself staring at the tactical display showing Earth below them. On that planet, thousands of exchange program veterans were going about their lives, some struggling with reintegration like herself, others trying to build normal lives after extraordinary experiences. We need to contact all of them, she said quietly. Every surviving veteran of the exchange program. They need to understand what's at stake. Admiral Chen nodded grimly. I'll authorize emergency recall for all veterans. But Sarah, you understand what this means? You're being asked to decide the fate of the entire human species. No, Sarah corrected. We're being asked to decide whether humanity as we know it should continue to exist, or whether we should become something else entirely. And we have less than 24 hours to reach a unanimous decision among people scattered across the globe, many of whom haven't spoken to each other in years. Over the next several hours, transports launched from every major city on Earth, carrying veterans to emergency assembly points. Sarah watched the arrivals with growing anxiety. These were her peers, young people aged 16 to 25 who'd given their childhoods to galactic service. Now they held the future of their species in their hands. Some arrived angry, pulled away from carefully constructed civilian lives. Others came willingly, secretly relieved to be called back to purpose. A few had to be retrieved from psychiatric facilities where they'd been receiving treatment for what doctors had diagnosed as elaborate delusions. By evening, 147 surviving exchange program veterans had assembled aboard Earth's defense platforms and orbital stations. The youngest was 16, having completed accelerated service in non-combat roles. The oldest was 26, a veteran of the earliest exchange missions who'd spent nearly half his life in alien military service. As Sarah prepared to address the assembly that would decide humanity's fate, she reflected on the irony that the outcasts who couldn't fit into high school were being asked to determine whether their species should transcend its limitations or remain forever human. The military had indeed forged them into warriors, but perhaps their greatest battle was yet to come. The assembly hall aboard Luna Station had never hosted such a momentous gathering. 1,247 exchange program veterans filled the vast chamber, representing every branch of galactic military service and every world where humans had served alongside alien allies. The weight of their collective experience was palpable. These young people had seen more of the universe's wonders and horrors than most species encountered in millennia. Sarah stood at the podium, looking out at faces that reflected her own struggle with identity and purpose. Some veterans wore civilian clothes that still seemed foreign on their military-trained bodies. Others had never fully transitioned out of service uniforms. All carried the unmistakable bearing of those who'd faced death among the stars and lived to remember it. "We all know why we're here," Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "We've been given a choice that no human generation has ever faced before. We can remain as we are, struggling to fit into a world that doesn't understand what we've experienced, or we can accept transformation into something beyond human limitation." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Near the front, she recognized Colonel Maria Santos, the oldest veteran present who'd led the first human unit to serve alongside the Zephyrian fleet. Behind her sat dozens of faces Sarah knew from various campaigns, warriors who'd bled together under alien suns, now asked to decide the fate of their birth species. "But before we debate the observer's offer," Sarah continued, "we need to hear from everyone. This decision affects not just us but every human who will ever be born. We owe it to our species to consider every perspective." The first to speak was Lieutenant James Muller, a veteran of the Crystalline Wars whose left eye had been replaced with a quantum sensor after injury. "I've spent 2 years trying to readjust to civilian life. Do you know what it's like to have combat reflexes triggered by a school fire drill? To know 17 ways to kill someone with a pencil, while your biggest concern is supposed to be choosing a college major?" Heads nodded throughout the assembly. Many had struggled with similar disconnection from civilian life. "The Observer offers us a place where our experiences matter," Muller continued, "where the training that makes us outcasts here would make us valued members of a galactic civilization. I say we take it." Sergeant Lisa Park stood next, her communication implants gleaming in the chamber's lights. "But at what cost?" The Observer made it clear that accepting means abandoning our essential humanity. We'd become something else, enhanced, extended, but no longer truly human. What gives us the right to make that choice for our entire species? The debate that followed was intense and emotional. Veterans shared stories of alienation, of feeling like strangers in their own homes, of possessing knowledge and skills that their birth world couldn't appreciate or utilize. Others spoke of family members they'd never see again if they transcended human limitations, of the beauty and human fragility that might be lost through enhancement. Captain David Thompson, his prosthetics interfacing seamlessly with the station's systems, offered a different perspective. "Some of us are already more machine than human," he said, gesturing to his artificial limbs. "My enhancements don't make me less human. They make me capable of serving in ways I couldn't before. Maybe evolution isn't about losing humanity, but expanding what humanity can become." The arguments continued for hours. Veterans who'd served in the deepest reaches of space spoke of wonders that awaited human exploration, galaxies full of life and knowledge beyond imagination. Others countered with memories of Earth's simple pleasures: sunset walks, family dinners, the laughter of children who'd never known war. As the debate wore on, Sarah noticed patterns emerging. The veterans most eager to accept transformation were those who'd struggled most with civilian reintegration. They'd found purpose among the stars and felt lost in the mundane world of human society. Those most reluctant to change spoke of connections to humanity that transcended their personal difficulties. Parents they loved, siblings they wanted to protect, a world they'd fought to defend. Near midnight, Colonel Santos requested the floor. The chamber fell silent as the most senior veteran present stood to speak. "I was 16 when I first left Earth," she said, her voice carrying the weight of decades in alien service. "I've commanded fleets that could level worlds, negotiated treaties that prevented genocidal wars, and witnessed the birth of new civilizations. But I've also remembered my mother's cooking, dreamed of Earth's rain, and carried a photo of my hometown through battles across 17 star systems." She paused, scanning the faces of her fellow veterans. "The question isn't whether we deserve a place among the stars. We've proven that beyond doubt. The question is whether we can honor both what we've become and what we came from. The observer presents this as a binary choice, but warriors know that the best strategies often find third options. Captain Rodriguez, veteran of the Aquatic Defense Fleet, stood up. "What are you suggesting, Colonel?" "I'm suggesting we reject both their premise and their timeline. We don't make this decision under pressure in a single day. We negotiate terms that allow humanity to evolve at its own pace in its own way. We use our status as proven warriors to demand equal partnership rather than accepting conversion." The chamber erupted in discussion. The idea was audacious, refusing the terms set by beings who could easily destroy Earth if offended. But these were veterans who'd made careers of achieving impossible victories through unconventional thinking. Sarah felt something shift in her understanding of the situation. The observer said we passed their test by showing courage, adaptability, and ethical flexibility. What if accepting their terms without question actually demonstrates the opposite? What if the real test is whether we have the courage to forge our own path? Lisa Park's communication implants suddenly activated, her expression growing alert. "I'm receiving transmissions from other species in the greater collective. They're warning us. Many of them accepted transformation and regret it. They've lost essential aspects of what made them unique." The revelation changed everything. The veterans who'd been ready to accept enhancement now reconsidered, while those who'd been hesitant found their instincts validated. The greater collective wasn't a voluntary association of equals. It was a homogenizing force that consumed unique species characteristics. "We need a unified response," Sarah announced. "Not just unanimous agreement, but a creative solution that protects both our humanity and our place in the galactic community." As dawn approached, 1,247 veterans reached a consensus that would have been impossible for any other group of humans. They would reject the observer's binary choice and propose a third path, a partnership that preserved human independence while allowing for gradual, voluntary evolution. Some individuals might choose enhancement, but humanity as a species would remain free to determine its own destiny. The decision was unanimous, as required, but it was unanimous rejection of the terms rather than acceptance of either option. The veterans had once again found a way to win by changing the rules of engagement. As they prepared to deliver their answer to first observer Catherine, Sarah realized that the qualities that made them outcasts in high school, their refusal to accept conventional limitations, their willingness to think beyond normal parameters, their absolute commitment to protecting others, were exactly what humanity needed for this moment. They had been forged into warriors by military service, but perhaps their greatest victory would be preserving their species' right to choose its own path among the stars. The communication chamber aboard the Defiant crackled with tension as Sarah prepared to deliver humanity's response. Behind her stood representatives of all the exchange program, veterans, a united front of young warriors, who'd already changed the course of galactic history once and were about to do it again. First observer Catherine's holographic form materialized with the same ethereal presence as before, but Sarah's enhanced senses detected something different. Surprise, perhaps, or uncertainty. The ancient being had clearly expected a simple yes or no answer. "We have reached a unanimous decision," Sarah announced, her voice carrying the absolute confidence of someone speaking for an entire species. "We reject your terms." The observer's form flickered, the first sign of genuine emotion Sarah had detected. "You refuse ascension? After proving your worthiness through trials that few species survive?" "We refuse the binary choice you've presented," Sarah clarified. "We propose a third option, one that honors both our achievements and our autonomy." She stepped forward, drawing on every diplomatic skill she'd learned during 12 years of alien service. "You say we've proven our worth through courage, adaptability, and ethical flexibility. Then judge us by those same standards now. We propose gradual integration rather than immediate transformation, individual choice rather than species-wide conversion, partnership rather than assimilation." Colonel Santos moved to stand beside Sarah, her decades of experience lending weight to their position. "We've communicated with other species in your collective. Many regret losing their unique characteristics in exchange for enhanced capabilities. We won't repeat their mistakes." First observer. Catherine's image stabilized, and when she spoke, her mental voice carried notes Sarah hadn't heard before. something like respect mixed with genuine curiosity. You would negotiate with beings whose technology could erase your world without effort? We've done it before, Lieutenant Muller interjected, his quantum-enhanced eye gleaming. During the crystalline wars, we negotiated peace between species that had been trying to genocide each other for millennia. Sometimes the weakest party at the table holds the strongest position if they're willing to think creatively. The observer was silent for long moments, processing this unexpected development. Finally, she spoke again. What specifically do you propose? Sarah had spent the remaining hours before dawn working with the Veteran Council to develop their counteroffer. Now she presented it with the precision of a military briefing. First, individual choice. Any human who desires enhancement may join the collective voluntarily, but our species as a whole remains independent and unmodified. Second, gradual technological integration. We'll accept advanced knowledge and capabilities, but we'll adapt them to work with human physiology and psychology, rather than abandoning our biological foundation. Lisa Park continued the presentation. Third, reciprocal exchange. Our veterans have already proven that human tactical innovation and ethical flexibility bring value to galactic civilization. We want formal recognition as equal partners, rather than junior members seeking acceptance. Fourth, added Captain Thompson, his prosthetics interfacing seamlessly with the ship's systems, protection for developing species. We've seen what your tests cost in lives and civilizations. We want a voice in determining which species face trials and how those trials are conducted. The observer's image flickered again, this time with what Sarah interpreted as amusement. You seek to reform the collective itself, to change practices that have guided galactic development for millions of years. If necessary, Sarah replied without hesitation, we've learned that the most effective military units adapt their tactics to new situations, rather than rigidly following ancient protocols. Perhaps it's time for the collective to evolve as well. Captain Rodriguez spoke up from his position at the tactical display. During my service with the Aquatic Defense Fleet, I learned that the strongest alliances are formed between equals who respect each other's strengths. Forced conversion creates resentment, not loyalty. First Observer Catherine was quiet for a much longer period this time. When she finally responded, her mental voice carried something Sarah had never expected to hear from such an ancient being: uncertainty. Your proposal is unprecedented. In all the millennia of collective expansion, no species has refused our terms while simultaneously demanding partnership. Most either accept transformation eagerly or reject contact entirely. Then maybe it's time to try something new, Sarah said simply. You tested us to see if we were worthy of joining galactic civilization. Now we're testing you to see if you're worthy of human partnership. The audacity of the statement sent ripples of shock through the human command staff, but the veterans remained calm. They'd learned to read alien psychology during their service, and Sarah's enhanced senses detected approval rather than anger from the observer. The collective will need to deliberate, Catherine finally announced. This decision cannot be made by a single observer. We will return to our fleet and consult with the Council of Minds. How long will that take? Admiral Chen asked. Not long by collective standards, perhaps a few of your hours. But be warned, if our answer is no, you will have no second chance. The collective does not tolerate defiance from lesser species. With respect, Sarah replied, we're not a lesser species anymore. We're the species that found a third option when you thought only two existed. That should count for something. As the communication ended and the observer's image faded, the command center erupted in nervous conversation. They just gambled the future of humanity on the hope that ancient beings who'd guided galactic development for eons might be willing to change their fundamental approach. Think it'll work? Marcus asked quietly, moving to stand beside Sarah at the viewport showing Earth below. It has to, Sarah replied. We didn't survive 12 years of alien military service just to come home and surrender our species' independence. Whatever happens now, we'll face it as humans. Enhanced humans, perhaps, but humans nonetheless. 3 hours later, the alien fleet began transmitting again. This time, First Observer Catherine wasn't alone. The holographic display showed 3 additional beings, each representing different aspects of collective authority. When they spoke, their combined mental voice carried the weight of civilizations. The Council has deliberated. Your proposal is accepted with conditions. Sarah felt her heart rate accelerate but kept her expression neutral. What conditions? A trial period of 100 of your years. During this time, individual humans may join the collective voluntarily, and we will share non-transformative technologies. Human tactical innovations will be evaluated by our military academies. If the partnership proves beneficial to both sides, it will be made permanent. And if it doesn't, then humanity remains independent but isolated. No further contact, no technology sharing, no participation in galactic affairs. Choose wisely. Sarah looked around at her fellow veterans, seeing the same determination in their eyes that had carried them through impossible battles. They'd won again, but this victory was just the beginning of a longer campaign. "We accept," she announced. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the same high school hallway where she'd once felt like an alien among her own species. But now everything was different. The exchange program had been expanded, with voluntary participants from every nation on Earth. Advanced alien technologies were being adapted for human use, creating opportunities for students to explore careers that hadn't existed a year before. Most importantly, the veterans were no longer outcasts. Their experiences were valued, their skills needed, their perspectives sought after as humanity began its gradual integration into galactic civilization. Sarah herself had been appointed as Earth's first liaison to the collective, a position that required someone who could think like both a human and a galactic citizen. She still attended Jefferson High School part-time, completing her civilian education while preparing for responsibilities that spanned star systems. Her classmates no longer saw her as strange. They saw her as a bridge to wonders beyond their world. The military had indeed forged her into a warrior. But perhaps more importantly, it had taught her to think beyond conventional limitations. When the time came to choose humanity's path among the stars, that unconventional thinking had made all the difference. As she walked toward her interstellar diplomacy class, taught jointly by human teachers and alien advisors, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She'd gone from outcast to hero, from warrior to diplomat, from human to something uniquely new while remaining essentially herself. The future stretched ahead, full of challenges and opportunities that no human had ever imagined, and at the forefront of that future stood the exchange program veterans, young people who'd been shaped by war but who had chosen to forge peace. They were humanity's greatest success story, warriors who'd learned that the most important battles were won not through force, but through the courage to imagine better possibilities.